Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to Startup Summit Day 2. So for those of you that don't know me, my name is Hazel Jane. I'm an entrepreneur engagement manager for Tech Nation. And it's a really big privilege today to be interviewing you, Ollie. So if we just jump straight in, could you let us know what your job title is, what you get up to on a day-to-day at Accenture?
Yeah, sure. I thought you were going to say just on a day-to-day, but
just on a day-to-day.
Yeah, exactly. Well, firstly, really happy to be here and good morning to everyone. So as you said, so I'm Ollie Akechi. I look after all of the work we do across capital market firms in the UK around restructuring and working closely with financial services firms. So in reality, that means helping them with things like divestments, business transfers. That thing called Brexit also came under my remit for financial services firms, and just helping with any type of structural change to their business models. The other role that I play, which is probably more relevant for this discussion and for this audience, is I lead our innovation agenda for capital markets in the UK. And then in addition to that also, which I think might also be relevant here, I look after the ethnicity agenda for all of our strategy and consulting practice across the UK, so agnostic of industry. So yeah, those are the things that I do work-wise, and happy to be here today.
That is a lot. I think everyone would love to know just how you run your time management.
I can give you tips, but the key thing is good teams. Good teams is essential.
Yeah. That's a good start. Just so everyone knows who's watching, there is space for Q&A within this interview. So if you do have any questions, pop them in the chat box, and hopefully we will get to them. So I do encourage you to ask any questions. But I thought we could just start by going through what your journey was, what your career journey was, where you started, and kind of how you ended up to where you are, juggling many, many things and spinning lots of plates.
Yeah, sure. So I guess just taking it back. So I'm one of 5 siblings. Grew up in Wimbledon, and grew up in a Nigerian household, whereby it was installed in us at a very, very early age. Good work ethic and just working hard and working probably harder also, I think, than most of our peers in order to get along. So I think that was definitely something that has been ingrained in us. I mean, I remember having lessons after school at home with dad in the office and what have you. So went through all of the kind of education, did a couple of internships with financial services firms. Got the idea of what consultancy was all about, and for me it brought about a lot of variation, so not necessarily doing the same thing all the time, which I think is very probably a lot of the people on this broadcast can relate to that, and for me that kind of grabbed my attention more than working for the bank I was working for at the time when I was doing my internship. So I came across Accenture. And I joined Accenture straight after graduating. I graduated from Brunel University. I studied information systems, got a first, and came to Accenture. And I've been with Accenture since, but I've done, and that's been now 12 years. But I've done a variety of roles in that period of time. And I think we're going to kind of get to it. But I think it's a very entrepreneurial place that you can be, and you can kind of forge your own way, and there's no kind of like set process of how to do certain things. So that's definitely works for me and my character.
That's really interesting. When I think of Accenture, super structured and such a big organization, but it's amazing to hear that there is that entrepreneurial spirit, within the company. And can you talk about what it's like having kind of come through Accenture, essentially, from straight out of university all the way through to where you are now at a very kind of high level. How has it been to be a black leader within that environment?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't take that for granted, at least now. I think previously, I kind of went through my career, not necessarily always, remembering, yes, I'm the black female in the room, the only black female in the room, or the only black person in the room. So sometimes you do need to actually just step back and kind of realize actually where you are in the context of the peers that you have around you, and what normal looks like. But for me, I think a lot of the upbringing that I had as a child has helped to foster that mindset of anything is possible, and keep going, and don't give up. And even if a lot of the people around the table don't look like you, that's okay, because let's introduce a little bit of difference and a little bit of flavor. So that was always my my kind of mindset going through the firm, and going through the ranks. And it's been a question that people have asked me before, because if I look at the demographics, it's all very public and open. But if I just look at the demographics we have in the UK for our managing directors, our partner level, we have 8 black partners, black MDs. I think I'm the only one who's gone through the firm from graduation, as opposed to being hired in. And I think it's important to show people that you can go through the ranks, you can climb through the ranks in an organisation. And I think for me, some of the things that we're probably going to get to have definitely helped me across that journey. But I think the biggest thing, if I kind of think about everything I could think about that has helped me, the one thing that I would say is mindset. It's the ability to believe that it is possible and keep going, because you'll always have the doubts, the worries, whether you're doing this within a corporation, or whether you are doing this for your own business. You'll always have your own doubts, your own anxieties, your own fears, the risks that will stop you potentially from doing something. But you've got to kind of understand how to kind of segregate that, because there's always going to be those worries. And of course, then a lot of other people may have those additional worries as well. So if there's too much there for you to focus on, or for you to kind of absorb, you lose your focus. So for me, it's been from day one, it's been the attitude and the belief that it is possible. And I can get to where I need to get to. I just need to continue following a set of guidelines, or what have you, and keep on proving to other people that breaking the status quo is possible. So that was motivation enough. Mm-hmm. I remember going in my years when I was going, like now 2.5 years ago, before making partner. And I remember people saying, you've not been in the business for that long. Set your expectations. I remember being told that I wasn't grey enough, right? Grey-haired enough, right? So all of these things can be in the nicest way possible. I was told that, but still, all of these things can kind of hinder your ability to believe in yourself for the next level. But you've just got to keep on going, and just not listen to the negativity that might be out there, because you're probably dealing with your own internal negative thoughts anyway, because we're all human. So just mindset is definitely one of the key things that has helped me get through.
Absolutely. I love that you touched on something now, which is, you're not grey-haired enough. Actually, times are changing, and just because something was done a certain way however long ago, it doesn't mean that is now the case forever. And we can say, well, that doesn't matter anymore. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. But to go back to kind of your job role in terms of looking at businesses that are restructuring, and that consultancy, that strategy piece. Obviously, you're looking at a lot of businesses that are adapting, changing, changing, and this could be based on growth, this could be based on COVID related kind of issues, obviously this can be related to Brexit. So I suppose it's really interesting to understand what businesses and leaders do you see really successfully making those changes and doing those restructures without kind of a lot of casualty.
Yeah, particularly in 2020, I think that's a really important question. I think just for context, there is so much change that we are seeing in the industry, and actually a lot of change that we were seeing pre-COVID. So with everything that's happened this year, and there's been a number of events, not just clearly the pandemic, but with every big catastrophe that has kind of emerged properly this year, it's really forcing businesses, entrepreneurs, individuals to sit back and kind of understand, okay, actually, we need to probably reimagine a different way of doing something. And that type of thinking, I think, has definitely accelerated, but it's not in all cases that people are starting from scratch. But I think that that there are common factors, regardless of where you are in the journey, in terms of how you can prepare yourself for change. And I think at the heart of any change of any business is strong leadership. You asked me at the beginning, how do I juggle the different things that I juggle? Sometimes I wonder, right? But I tell you what, it is good teams, and that's what I've said for the last 5 years when people ask me the same question. As a leader, your teams will only really do what you ask them to do, or what you instill in them, or what you empower in them to do. And to reimagine a different set of products that you, as a business, you've never potentially manufactured these products. We've seen companies really changing their product lines or their services lines, how they go to market, etc. That type of stuff doesn't happen overnight. Somebody in that team would have had to have the creative idea to say, what about this? So really it comes down to teams and people, because it's the humanity of the people in our teams who actually moves business. It's not ones and zeros who make business happen. So the ability to foster the right team, to foster an innovative team, to foster a team that's committed, to foster a team that's passionate, that's dedicated, all of these things, it really stems from strong leadership. And I think the firms who understand that and are instilling their leaders with the right capabilities and strengths to become leaders of today and leaders of tomorrow are the people who are going to be front runners in terms of how they adapt to change. I like to look at the topic around next generation leadership, which I know that we're going to cover in a little bit more detail. But for me, next generation leaders are totally leaders who are leading with impact. It doesn't matter how grey haired you are. It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, what your background is. It really matters what you are, what you do, right? Like what you do. So your role title doesn't necessarily matter. They're leading with the kind of the small L as opposed to the big L of leadership. So there are a number of, I think, characteristics that those types of leaders will have. And I think employing just even a few of those characteristics will really help an organization. And I think the trick is when what the magic formula of all of these different characteristics are, and you can encourage various people, various leads that you have to mix and blend those characteristics so that your entire organization is moving at the right pace and in the right journey.
Absolutely. Such a big topic, and there's so much to unpack there in terms of what makes a good leader, and I suppose it'd be nice to just go back a little bit. You said teams are so important. Do you have an idea, or is there advice that you give companies when they're building teams and you say this is the best way to build a strong team? For any startups that are watching, they may not have the capital to be able to employ the best people, the people with the most experience, but they still need really, really strong teams. And do you have some advice on how to do that?
Yeah, sure. So I think it comes down to I kind of boiled this down to a number of things that are useful to have in a leader, and you can talk about this in terms of you can have these across your teams, right? But for me, it's that the leader is the person who is enabling the teams to have some of these characteristics. So if I go back to the new generation leadership, I think the characteristics are that there are a few, and I'm happy to kind of get into the detail. I think if you categorize them in three areas, it's probably the easiest way. And I don't want people to listen to this and think, oh my God, there's like 10 things she's about to say, and like I don't have all of them. That's okay. Like you probably have a few of them, and that's enough. Know who to collaborate with to have the others. But I would say there are probably three core categories of new generation, next generation leadership. The first are things around your kind of your traditional types of leadership characteristics that you need to kind of just, I would call them the hygiene factors. Keep those in place, keep the lights on. And that's really around making decisions, the ability to be decisive and to be quick in your decision making. We've only seen that this year leadership across the world in terms of politics, in terms of dealing with the pandemic, has really meant that people will literally, as I say, only do what you ask them or what you tell them to do, and how you lead them through that. And making the decisions in the right time frame is really, really important. So that's number one, again, a traditional characteristic. Another traditional characteristic for me will be communications. So the ability to actually communicate effectively with your team, knowing exactly what your team members are like, and understanding what works for them in terms of communication and what works for them in terms of motivation. There are some people who your leadership style with them may be a little bit more directive because they need more direction. Others who they may be able to fend for themselves a lot more easier. So it's actually around the ability to delegate effectively with that person, that maybe your kind of go-to person that you go to help you with lots of stuff. And then there may be some bits and pieces in between. But I'd say those two are probably the kind of the traditional aspects of leadership. The next section for me is probably my favorite. It's the emotional aspect of leadership. And by emotions, I really mean, energy, in like putting energy in motion, like true emotion, and the ability to connect with people on a deeper level will build you stronger relationships, will foster stronger relationships where people end up following you. And that's what leadership is. It's your ability to have a following, not just your ability to tell people what to do. Right? I've said a few times, people will only do what you tell them to do, but they may do it, but they may not do it with the right passion or with the right heart. And what you want in that kind of emotional aspect of leadership is to connect and find a bond, so that the people in your team or the people that you're working with are doing things for the right reasons, and they're following you. You're creating that kind of followership and that branding. And some of the real specifics around kind of the emotional aspects of leadership for me will be empathy, having empathy with people, really understanding where your teams and where people that you're working with are coming from, understanding the situation that they may be and may not be the same situation for you. A great example is COVID. Where we live in this environment now where everyone turns on their screens. Some people in your team may not want to turn on their screens if they're doing a video chat. Have you digged into why that might be? So really having empathy with your teams can go, I think, a long way. The other thing for me is advocacy. Advocacy as a next generation leader is huge. It's what a lot of NGLs are doing these days. They are advocating for something. They have a mission. And their followers, their people in their teams, they love the fact that they have a mission. They're on a mission to do something. And, we are no longer in a society whereby particularly as a consultant, where I'm helping clients. Once upon a time, we were really just helping clients. I say we, that the industry of consultants are helping clients with the bottom line, right? With revenue, with costs, etc. Now we're really shifted and helping them to be impactful. And that takes us down the route of things like social and corporate responsibility and advocating for something of the greater good, whatever that thing is, but have a purpose in what you're actually doing. Be an advocate and be a loud and proud advocate for something. So that's really important. I think the other thing as well is around vulnerability and authenticity. The ability to be a vulnerable leader and show a little bit of your personality, a little bit of your heart, a little bit of your fears, your hopes, your dreams, your aspirations. If you have a target, if you have a vision, say it out loud. You may not hit it, but still say it out loud, because other people want to understand what that target is, what you are trying to achieve, and what it would mean to you if you don't achieve that particular goal. So get your teams invested in the goal that you are working towards. And even if you don't meet that goal, that's okay. Let them see the human side of you, that things don't always go to plan potentially. But that's definitely another big thing. The third category for me is more around just the creativity and the kind of the reimagination. And this is where the entrepreneurial aspect comes in. And regardless of whether you are working in an organization, I still say treat the business like it's your own. Don't go to sleep and think that everything is switched off and come back the next day and turn on your laptop or your computer. Treat the business like it's your own. Be prepared to take some risks. Be prepared to structure certain deals in different ways. Don't worry about breaking the status quo. Don't worry about necessarily always asking for permission. Potentially, sometimes you need to ask for forgiveness. I'm not saying break the rules too much, but I'm saying be ready and be willing to go outside. To kind of go outside of the normality and the status quo. And as I say again, be really ready to reimagine a different way of doing something. It's okay to do something completely different and be innovative in that kind of journey. And it's also fun. It's really fun, and that's where the variation for me in terms of working in consultancy has come from. So that's definitely a big factor. And the other thing for me in terms of just the creativity is how you collaborate. I rarely work on a project or an initiative or an engagement, whether it's at Accenture or outside, whereby I'm only leveraging one type of skill. I'm constantly working with different types of people, and I think the ability to see yourself as an online shopper, for example, for somebody else. So let's say you're doing the shopping for somebody who has requested some food from Sainsbury's, and you're the person going into the shop and finding the various bits and pieces that this person has requested. See yourself as that shopper in everyday kind of work life, and making sure that you are bringing the best pieces to the table. And where somebody potentially that you wanted doesn't exist, go and find an alternative, really good replacement. But always just keep going and keep on kind of finding a way to get there. But collaboration is absolutely key. It's key right now. So those would be my kind of set of characteristics to be aware of and tips.
There's a lot to chew on. There's actually some fantastic questions that have come in, and I hope that we can get through as many of them as possible. Someone here has asked, this is from Neil, do you think that you can teach leadership, or do you think that there is just a natural ability that people have to lead?
I think it's a bit of both. It's a great question. I think it's a bit of both, because you don't wake up as like this leader, right? You have to go through a journey. We've all had a little bit of command and control and management in our leadership style, but you really have to go through a journey. For me, for example, I absolutely was never as open and as vulnerable as I can be now than I was, a good few, like 5 years ago. But I realized the importance of sharing my stories, of sharing my lived experiences. I really realized that importance. And the minute I did, it just unlocked this thing whereby you couldn't stop me talking about my lived experiences, because I believe that could help someone else. So I think the trigger for me in my leadership has been around just being a little bit more vulnerable. And I learned how to do that. I learned by watching, I learned by listening and hearing the fact that people wanted to see a bit more of me. And actually, the minute I started realizing the benefits of doing that in terms of actually being like having real impact on someone's life, if I can share my story as a young Black female in financial services, to help somebody, to inspire someone, then I'm going to continue doing that in different guises. And that's what's happened. So I think there are aspects that you absolutely can teach of leadership, but I think you have to be willing to receive the information. You have to be willing to learn. So it's definitely not a you're not born with all of these various characteristics, and some of us are going to do some of them more so than others, for sure. But yeah, I know there's a lot there, and I'm really happy to give more information on this topic as well, if that helps.
I think that's a fantastic answer, and we did at Tech Nation a long time ago. It was that everyone did one of those great personality quizzes. It was quite, I suppose, it was quite detailed, and we all came out with colours that represented our personality. So this person just wants to be directly asked a question. They don't need the how are yous, they don't need this, they just want to get to the root of what's going on. And other people are more yellow, and they need they want a bit of chat, and they want to connect with their colleagues. And actually it really changed the whole way that the company worked, because there was a real understanding of who people were, and we'd made the effort to kind of invite people into who we were on a more vulnerable level, and we worked better ever since. I think there's some really good tools out there that can help with that. You don't have to be a kind of a whisperer of everyone and understand what everyone needs all of the time. There are kind of tools that are available. Right. And there's another great question here, which is from Joe. And it says, how do us grey-haired leaders best facilitate the development of younger leaders at the earliest stages of their career?
Oh, that's a great question. Thanks for the question. So I think it's a two-way journey. I think there's definitely things to be learned on both sides. It's like reverse mentoring. But I think encouraging what I've seen with a lot of younger people starting their careers right now is that they want inspiration. They want to believe in a career, in a business, in an ecosystem whereby they can be successful, and they want to see people like them who can be successful. They want to see the unimaginable happen. And I think given the differences in generations and where we've done things very traditionally previously, we're moving to an era now where more is that there's an ability to do more potentially. I think it's important that we, in whatever generation we are encouraging the next generations to do more and to break more barriers, and to not necessarily be focused on how we did something previously and it's not going to work. Like, so for example, a few years ago when I was going for MD partner, being told typically the process is that you would have been in the firm for a bit longer. If I had listened to that, I probably wouldn't be here right now, right? My journey would have been a bit different. So I think continuously encouraging the next generation to do more and to do it better than we did in this generation has to be the way forward.
That's fantastic. Thank you. We are coming to the end of our time, but I'm really keen to just touch on the idea that you're running the ethnicity agenda. I just want to ask, how is that to run such an important piece in such a large company, and what advice would you give to other people who really want that on the table in their companies?
Yeah, so a huge task, something I don't take lightly, something I'm really passionate about. I think it's super important to show people that, you know, and in fact, as part of new generation leaders, one thing I didn't touch on is around the emotional aspect is diversity and inclusion. It is the one thing that every single organization needs to have in its armor, in its toolkit. And that goes from diversity and inclusion of the physicality, but also of thought, and particularly when it comes to being innovative and reimagining different ways of doing things. So from a kind of ethnicity agenda, which sits very firmly in our D&I, diversity and inclusion broader agenda, it's definitely something that we take very seriously. You know, Accenture, we have made a number of statements this year alone, in the last few weeks actually, around what we will be doing around ethnicity, so that there's lots there to chew on. I think in terms of tips for other organisations, I kind of boil it down again into three things. So education, advocation, and investing. So there's lots that can be done to educate your workforces. And again, going back to that concept of reverse mentoring, but also education from a whistleblowing perspective. If you see something that doesn't look right, you know, raise your hand, and giving people the tools and the experiences to understand what good looks like and what good doesn't look like, and what is not acceptable, what's not okay. The piece around the advocacy for me is that piece around continuing to hold someone's hand and let them know this is okay, right? We are here to support you. You have the ability to. I think you've disappeared, but I'm gonna keep going, and hopefully everyone can still hear me. But you have a support network. Having a strong support network is going to be really, really important. And I think it's also around being a loud advocate. So it's well and good. It's all well and good to you know, to be saying statements out there in terms of what you are going to be doing, but how much are you actually showing that you are going to be a true advocate for somebody else? That's really important. So getting behind people on social media posts, you know, encouraging people, whatever it is, but being a real loud and proud advocate for your community is really important. And then the last piece is around investing. So actually investing in communities, investing in programs to assist your own employees, whether, you know, at senior levels, getting them to the next level, or whether at the kind of junior level and getting them to mid-level management. So again, a number of things around that, but advocate, educate, and invest are definitely the key things I would say to organisations.
Thanks, Holly. I know I probably dropped out for a minute there. I can apologise for that. Real sign of the time. But I heard most of it, and I will watch it back. So I think
no worries.
Coming to the end of our time, thank you so much. This has been so interesting. I think leadership is something that is being put on the table more and more now. It's not just about being the CEO, it's about what does that mean to be a leader, or being a managing director, or being, you know, the head of a function. So everything you said here has been really, really practical, but also really inspiring, and I think really thought-provoking. So thank you so much. Do you have anything else that you would like to mention before we say goodbye for the morning?
No, I just hope it's been useful. I think the takeaways are, you know, next generation leadership. There's 3 different categories that you should really focused on, with a number of different characteristics. And then I think in terms of the ethnicity piece and diversity and inclusion, again, 3 different categories that you should be focused on: educate, invest, with a number of different specific actions. I'm very happy to share some more links with you in terms of just a recap of all of those things, if it's helpful for the group. And the other thing I would say is be bold, reach out to people, ask for help, don't stop asking for help. This is the Startup Summit community. So I will say that we at Accenture, we have a number of fintech programs. We have a program around just founders, so not necessarily people at the beginning of their startup journey, but people maybe a little bit further on. We invest heavily in founders. We're also we've also made statements that we will be investing more so in Black founders as well. So we're doing a lot on this topic. And reach out to me if you want to hear any more information. We've just accepted all of the applicants for this year's FinTech Startup Program, but next year is possible. So please reach out to me. I'm literally at the forefront of all of this work. So would love to stay in contact and let's get connected. But be bold.
Amazing. Love that. Be bold. Right. Everyone can go boldly into the rest of their days. Thank you again so much for your time. It's been absolutely
very welcome.
Holly.
Lovely to be here. Thanks all. Bye.